Have you ever been mid-sentence when you watch someone's eyes glaze over? That subtle shift when they're physically present but mentally gone? Their attention drifting to their phone, the window, anywhere but your words? In that moment, though they're still nodding politely, something breaks. The connection snaps, and you're left wondering what went wrong. Before we dive in, I'm going to share something today that completely transformed how people respond to me. It's a simple technique I discovered that allowed me, someone who used to be regularly interrupted and ignored, to command a room full of senior executives' attention, despite being the most junior person there. Research from Harvard's communication department found that listeners make subconscious judgments about whether to pay attention within the first 7 seconds of someone speaking. And it's not based on what you'd expect. The breaking point. I was at my colleague Mark's dinner party. 8 of us around a table of tapas and wine. I started sharing a story about a client interaction that had profoundly affected me. Mid-sentence, Alicia interrupted with, "Oh my God, did anyone watch that new show on Netflix?" The table immediately pivoted. No one asked me to finish. No one even acknowledged the conversation shift. That night, lying awake at 2 a.m., I asked myself a painful question. What if the problem wasn't them? What if it was me? Not my personality or my worth, but my approach to communication itself. And this is where I discovered what I now call the invisible pull. The communication superpower that I'll break down step by step. The invisible wall. For 3 months, I observed every interaction like a scientist. I noticed when people leaned in and when they checked out. I watched how some stories captivated while others emptied rooms. The truth I discovered wasn't that I was boring or unlikable. It was that I, like most people, had been trained in communication tactics that actually repel connection rather than invite it. Schools teach us grammar and vocabulary, but not how to speak in ways that make people feel something. We learn to present information, not to create experiences. Here are the 3 unspoken rules of communication that changed everything for me and can do the same for you. Rule number 1. The deadliest conversation killer isn't silence. It's correction. Actually, I think you'll find that. Those 6 words might as well be a conversation guillotine. I used to say them constantly thinking I was being helpful, smart, precise. What I was actually doing was subtle social violence. Nearly every piece of communication advice you've ever received is fundamentally broken. Be confident. Stand tall. Project your voice. These aren't just incomplete, they're actively damaging your ability to connect. Why? Because they focus on how you appear rather than how you make others feel. And people don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel. When you correct someone, their brain experiences it almost identically to physical pain. Neuroimaging studies show the same regions that activate when we experience physical rejection light up when we're corrected in front of others. Here's a scene from my life. I'm talking with a friend who mentions, "I can't believe Saturn has 70 moons." My old self would have immediately jumped in. Actually, NASA confirmed it's 83 moons as of last year. Technically correct. Socially devastating. I realized this after watching Rachel, a quiet woman at work whose comments and meetings were sparse but always profoundly attended to. When someone shared an incorrect statistic, Rachel said, "That perspective is interesting. I've been looking at these numbers differently, and I'm seeing a 17% increase rather than 10%. Either way, we're moving in the right direction." No one felt wrong. Everyone felt included in a collaborative, truth-seeking process. The shift for me was simple but profound. I stopped trying to be right and started trying to be connecting. Rule number 2. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's gravity. For years I prepared for conversations like job interviews. I'd rehearse anecdotes, polish transitions, eliminate rough edges. I thought perfect delivery would make me more likable. Instead, it made me forgettable. I achieved significant results by implementing a strategic initiative that drove engagement metrics up by 40% while simultaneously reducing overhead costs. Did you feel yourself mentally checking out just now? That's because perfection doesn't connect. It performs. I discovered this watching Miguel, a new team member who instantly connected with everyone. His stories weren't particularly remarkable, but the way he told them was different. He'd pause. He'd admit uncertainty. He'd say things like, "This sounds ridiculous now that I'm saying it out loud," or "I still don't know how I feel about what happened." Those moments of authentic hesitation weren't weaknesses. They were invitations to connect. I was presenting our quarterly strategy, a huge moment in my career. As I began speaking, I noticed the CFO checking his watch. Instead of panicking, I paused and said, "Before I continue, I want to admit something. I rewrote this presentation 12 times last night because I was nervous about speaking to all of you. But what I really want is for us to solve this challenge together, not to impress you with polished slides. The room transformed. For the next 20 minutes, I had their complete attention. Not because my content suddenly improved, but because I created authentic human connection. Rule number 3. Your emotional frequency speaks louder than your words. Only 7% of communication is the actual words we use. The rest is tone, body language, and emotional frequency. Watch what happens when I say the exact same sentence 2 different ways. First with tense shoulders, darting eyes, and tight smile. I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts on this. Then with relaxed posture, direct eye contact, and genuine expression. I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts on this. Same words, completely different message. Your body broadcasts your true intentions whether you want it to or not. Try this right now. Notice the current position of your shoulders. Are they tense and raised or relaxed and lowered? Most people watching just realized their shoulders were hunched, and that subtle tension broadcasts anxiety in every interaction. I discovered this watching Elaine, a senior executive whose meetings everyone wanted to attend, despite her being soft-spoken. What made her magnetic wasn't vocal projection, it was her emotional congruence. Most of us broadcast mixed signals without realizing it. We say we're open to feedback while our crossed arms and tight jaw say otherwise. These incongruencies create cognitive dissonance in our listeners. I started practicing emotional honesty before conversations. Instead of masking anxiety with false confidence, I learned to align my outer expression with my inner state. The paradox. When I stopped trying to manipulate how I appeared and simply showed up authentically, people trusted me more. They listened more intently. They connected more deeply. The ultimate test. 6 months after that humiliating dinner party, I found myself in a job interview for a position I desperately wanted. As the interviewer asked the standard questions, I faced a choice. Rely on my rehearsed answers, or try something radically different. When asked about my greatest professional challenge instead of my usual polished story about turning adversity into opportunity, I paused and said, "Can I be completely honest with you? The hardest challenge I faced wasn't a project or deadline. It was learning to trust my own judgment after a major mistake cost my previous company a valuable client. For months afterward, I second-guessed every decision. I eventually realized that failing doesn't make me a failure. It makes me someone who takes meaningful risks." The interviewer set down her pen. We spent the next 40 minutes in genuine conversation. I later learned that out of 17 candidates with similar qualifications, I was the only one they remembered clearly. The invisible pull technique revealed. Here's the communication superpower I promised. The invisible pull technique combines all 3 principles into a single powerful approach that magnetically draws listeners in. The pattern break. Start with something unexpected that interrupts the listener's prediction of how the conversation will go. Before I answer that question, can I share something I've never told anyone about this project? The authentic bridge. Connect your message to something genuinely meaningful to you. Show why you care before showing what you know. This matters to me because 4 years ago, I was the person struggling with exactly this problem. The open space. End your most important points with vulnerability that invites others in. I'm still figuring out the best approach here, and I'd really value your perspective. When these 3 elements combine, people don't just hear you. They feel pulled toward your words. They lean in physically. They remember what you say. They connect with you on a human level. I've taught this technique to over 300 professionals now, from CEOs to people with debilitating social anxiety, and the results have been transformative. One client used it in a presentation and afterward had 3 different executives approach him. Another used it on a first date that turned into a 4-hour conversation. The power of this approach isn't that it makes you more impressive, it's that it makes you more human. And in a world where everyone is trying to impress, humanity is the scarcest resource. Remember, being heard isn't about commanding attention. It's about creating connection. It's not about being the most articulate speaker. It's about being the most authentic one. Here's my challenge to you. Use just one element of the invisible pull technique in the next 24 hours. Then come back and leave a comment describing what happened. What makes someone a captivating communicator isn't vocabulary or volume or virtuosity with words. It's the courage to be real in a world of carefully curated personas. That courage, it's already within you. It doesn't require complex techniques. It simply requires trust that your authentic voice with all its imperfections is exactly what the world is waiting to hear.